This is the Realme Q3 Pro disassembly. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe and follow me on Twitter so you'll be notified when I upload a new video. And if you need any tools, there are links in the description. First, the SIM tray needs to be removed. Next, we need to apply heat to the back plate using a hairdryer or a heat gun to loosen up the adhesive underneath, and then we're going to use a plastic pry tool to pry the back plate off. Here's a better look at the plastic back plate. There's graphite film on the bottom, as well as a white graphite film on top, which help transfer heat. There's also some foam padding. There are 16 Phillips screws that need to be removed. Now the camera lens cover can be removed. The glass portion of the camera lens cover can be replaced by applying heat and prying it off. Once the camera lens cover is removed, there's one more Phillips screw that needs to be removed. Now we need to place a plastic pry tool in between the back housing and the frame of the screen and run it along the edges to pop off the catches. Now the back housing can be lifted up from the right side to the left, and be careful since the LED flash cable is still connected. The back housing itself is made of plastic. There's more graphite film which helps transfer heat. The LED flash is located here as well as the light sensor, and there are two antenna flex cables on this side. There are more antenna flex cables around the border on the back side. Now that we have access to the battery cable, we're going to disconnect that first. Once the battery cable is disconnected, we can proceed to disconnect the rest of the cables. There are two coaxial cables on the right side of the board that need to be disconnected by popping them off. There's also copper tape covering the connector for the front-facing camera, which needs to be peeled off so we can disconnect and remove it. Here's a better look at the 16 megapixel front camera. There's a single Phillips screw which is holding down the main board that needs to be removed. The copper tape covering the earpiece speaker needs to be peeled off as well. Now the main board can be lifted up and removed. The 8 megapixel ultra-wide lens is located on top, followed by the 64 megapixel main lens and the 2 megapixel macro lens. None of the cameras have OIS or optical image stabilization. The camera connectors can be disconnected by just popping them off. There's a secondary microphone located on the top corner, and there's copper tape on the shields. There are also rubber gaskets around the connectors. Once the copper tape is peeled off, we can see thermal pads on these chips. Here's a better look with the thermal pads removed. The SIM reader is located on the back, and there's more copper tape on the main camera and the back shields, as well as thermal paste. Once the copper tape is peeled back, we can see more thermal paste on the processor and RAM. To remove the battery, there's a pull tab to help us pry the battery off. Here's a better look at the battery. Now we can disconnect the two flex cables which connect the subboard to the main board. As well as the screen cable. And then we can disconnect the fingerprint reader cable. If you needed to replace the screen, you'd have to remove the back plate and then remove the screws in the back housing. At that point you would have access to the screen cable. You'd then remove the red rubber gasket, apply heat to the front of the phone where the screen is to loosen up the adhesive underneath, pry your old screen off, apply new adhesive, and reapply your new screen, making sure you run the cable back through the midframe, and reassemble your phone. Moving on, there's a single Phillips screw holding down the subboard that needs to be removed. Now the subboard can be lifted up, but be careful since the coaxial cable is still attached underneath. There's a rubber gasket around the charger port, headphone jack, and connectors, and the primary microphone is located underneath the shield. Here's a look at the other side. The bottom speaker is held down with adhesive, so we need to pry that off. Here's a better look at that. And there's a mesh filter over the speaker opening. And the speaker also has those white foam balls underneath the black tape. The white coaxial cable is connected to an antenna board on the corner, and the vibrator motor and fingerprint reader are both held down with adhesive. The flex cable for the power button and the volume keys are both held down with adhesive, so if you want to replace those, you'd have to just gently pry them off. Once the battery adhesive pouch is pulled back and the flex cables are peeled off, we can see the stainless steel vapor chamber which lies underneath the battery and motherboard. The proximity sensor and earpiece speaker are both located on top, and they're both held down with adhesive. So if you need to replace those, you just apply some heat and pry them off. And there are two liquid damage indicator stickers, one's located on the side, and one under the same reader. For the repairability score, I give this phone a 6 out of 10. Now it's time to put the phone back together. Once everything's back in place, apply new adhesive and reapply your backplate. Flip over the phone, power it on, and you're done. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.